Hi guys, hi everyone, welcome. We're just waiting for a few people to join. We're having a bit of trouble with one of our panelists. Shoshana, are you in okay? You're on mute.
I think I'm working now.
You are, just unmuted you. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, hello everyone and welcome to another incredible YJP event. And it's really an honor, a pleasure and a privilege, all of the above, to have everyone over here. I'm just going to log in over here. Perfect. So we've got an incredible lineup tonight. We've got Irid. I'm not going to be the one introducing all the speakers, but we've got Irid, we've got Katrinas, Shoshana, and Leo, who's no stranger. But really YJP is about connecting people. It's about bringing people together. And I want to begin by firstly thanking our partners in crime, my dear wife, Dina, who is so instrumental in making everything happen. Brian Berger, who's always behind the scene doing an incredible job. Thank you, Brian. To Yehuda Gottlieb and Zalman Ainsworth, our two partners in YJP, and Hannah Wallen. It's really great to have the entire YJP crew over here. Before I introduce our moderator for tonight, I just want to say that we've all been living through turbulent times, and it's a time of uncertainty, of confusion, of unknown. We wait in anticipation for our Sunday weekly update, and sometimes it's more informative, sometimes it's less informative. But we're all adjusting. We're all getting used to different things, which are sort of giving us, if you like, comfort zones, and different things which are grounding us. And one of the beautiful things is that this week's Torah reading talks about the floods. And the flood is all about turbulent water, confusion, disarray, disorder, and yet the amazing thing was we had an ark that we were able to enter that gave us a sense of grounding, a sense of purpose. And if you like, YJP is hopefully that little ark that comes into your week once a week that gives you that sense of grounding, gives you that sense of purpose, a sense of focus. So welcome to another YJP event. It's great having you. I'm going to introduce you to Leo Bolter, who's no stranger to YJP. She was one of our keynote speakers a few weeks ago, and she did such an incredible job that we said we've got to have you back. And she actually organized tonight's event and pulled together our great group of speakers. So thank you so much. Leah is, for people who don't know, she is now running. If you're going into Bunnings today and you've shopped at Bunnings over the last couple of months, you have shopped thanks to her ability to pivot instantaneously, thanks to her ability to make sure that Bunnings could keep functioning in these crazy times. And since 2018, she's been doing head of the entire online sale, and has done an incredible job because I'm actually a customer. So thank you. So it's been quite amazing, and it's quite an enjoyable experience. I got a $100 voucher and I was able to use it, which is great. So thank you. But Leah, it's really great having you. You're an extraordinary, leader in the community. And thank you for organizing tonight. Thank you for chairing tonight. And thank you for being part of YJP. Welcome, and it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Moshe, and thanks, Moshe and Dina, for everything you do with YJP. I think it's just great to have events like tonight, especially when we're in lockdown. So tonight, to be honest, Moshe, wasn't that hard to ask, friends and colleagues to come along and have a chat. So that's what tonight really is about, just having a chat and talking about how different industries have pivoted and changed. So Shosh and I have been friends for many years, won't say how many years, but Shosh has had an incredible career as a lawyer, working in-house. She's worked at Virgin, she's worked at a lot of tech companies. So she's worked at PayPal, eBay, and now heading up legal for Google, which is incredible. And then we'll go on to Katrina and I have worked together also many years ago. We've traveled the world together, and we were at McKinsey together way back when we looked just like we do today. Katrina's had an incredible career, also working at Virgin. And Katrina has gone on to work in financial services industry, and she's now will talk through in particular the travel industry, and more recently as a non-executive director on the board of an insurance company. And Irit and I worked together back at ANZ when we were in strategy together, and Irit and I have kept in touch over the years, and it was was fantastic for Irit to come and join our team earlier this year, and caught up with Irit this morning in person, which was just awesome to get a takeaway coffee and have a chat. And Irit started in February, but mentioned that she's leading the innovation lab now at Bunnings, but has only met the team 5 times this year. And it's incredible the amount of innovation that Irit and the team have been able to do without actually meeting or catching up this year. So first of all, we'll just let Shosh, Katrina and Irit talk a bit about their career and how they've got to where they are today. And then I've got a few questions to ask, but would love for you all to just post some questions in the chat, and we'll try and weave them into some of the questions that I ask along the way. So over to you, Shosh. Hope the kids are quiet, dog's not barking, and you've got everything under control over there. So Shosh, do you want to take us through your incredible career so far? She pointed out she's working for a tech company. Can we unmute Shosh?
Yeah, it only works if you do it.
Okay.
But then it works. Thanks. Sorry, there. That was my that message to Leah that went to everyone. That's a typical day of mine. That's just me in a nutshell. But I'll start by saying that yeah, I feel really fortunate actually to have the role that I have, even though at the moment it's probably the busiest role I've ever had. But maybe just a bit about my journey. So I guess I was always interested in being a lawyer, and despite what Leah thinks, for some reason Leah thinks I was interested in commerce. She told me when she was prepping me for this earlier this week, she said, "Remember you were interested in commerce?" I said, "No." Anyway, so I always wanted to be a lawyer, and I even remember in high school, Leah and I both grew up in Brisbane, although we didn't know each other well then, but in high school, I used to go after school every day and try and catch the last hour of court before it finished, and just go by myself and watch the end of a criminal court case or something, and sit there at the back by myself in a school uniform. And now I look back and I think what a weird thing to do now that I have school-aged children. But at the time, I just couldn't wait to run out of school and watch court. So I think if I look back at it, I always wanted to do something like this. And then I moved to Sydney. Again, I blame Leah for this, but I had no plans to move to Sydney. I was happily enrolled at University of Queensland, and about 2 weeks before university was about to start, Leah said to me, "Why don't you just move to Sydney? Because my family is, so you should." And I stupidly said, "That sounds like a good idea. I'll just come to Sydney." And not easy to transfer courses 2 weeks before university starts, but somehow I got a meeting with the Dean of Arts. I knew I wasn't going to get into law at University of New South Wales, and did an arts degree and started there, and then eventually transferred to law. So eventually I got to where I wanted to. And then I started my law degree and straight away went into commercial litigation. It was still the passion of mine to stand up in court and to be part of the court process. And I just remember learning so much from those early days of having to be at court, and just the resilience and the toughness and the way judges speak to people. It was just fascinating to me. And then I had kids and realised that I didn't want to work all day and all night, and suddenly thought of other options. And I applied for a job at eBay at the time, and I got knocked back because they didn't have a job, but what they said to me was that there was a job at PayPal, and I had never heard of PayPal at the time. This was when PayPal was barely a startup. There were 10 people there. And they said, "Will you come in for an interview?" And I came in and they said, "Do you have any financial services experience?" And of course I didn't. I'd done litigation my whole life. I'd never been interested in something like that. And I said, "No, I don't have any of that." And they said, "Right, you're hired." And I said, "Great, this will work for everyone." So I was really honest about it, and straight away I launched into this financial services career that had nothing to do with litigation, and realized I loved startups. And really that was where I went from being what I see as a lawyer to person in tech, even though my tech's not good tonight. But I really loved the startup world. I loved the e-commerce. I loved everything about it, the dynamics of it, the way people operate in these kinds of startup world. It was just so new to me, coming from a stuffy law firm to suddenly see how people talk to each other in a whole different light. And the rest is history, I guess. I then moved to eBay and now to Google, and yeah, I love the work that I do. It's very dynamic, very exciting. There's literally never a dull moment. That's probably enough about me.
Thanks, Josh. We'll come back to you soon. So Katrina, you got your setup working, you got your tech working. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and your journey for your career?
Yes, I will. Well, my undergraduate is from Auckland University, and it is in it was a big commerce with a major in tech and a law degree with a major in commercial law. So fun fact, I now can barely work a mouse, so I'm amazed that my tech is working tonight. And unlike Josh, I managed to get through an entire law degree and get HDs the whole way through and not visit a courtroom. So Drew, if you can just blag your way through anything, I'm your girl. So coming out of that, my inspiration was not the back row of the courtroom in my school uniform, but a movie. Does anyone remember? We're really showing age now. There was a movie with Melanie Griffith in it called Working Girl, and she had these epic shoulder pads and this white shirt that had a little gold chain. She looked so good. So I was like, I want to go into business. So what do you do when you want to go into business but you have no idea what you want to do? You go into consulting. And that's where I met the lovely Leah. And we, which was just, I absolutely loved McKinsey. Not only because I got to used to get to drink wine with Leah and Shosh on the weekends, but mainly because it was just thrilling work. After that, I did a bit of freelance consulting for a while before I joined the Virgin Group. And I joined there as the sort of head of strategy for Virgin Money just after it started in Australia. And so that was super exciting. And I eventually went on to, I was a consultant and went on to become an employee there and joined Virgin Management, which is kind of like the branded private equity house. So that was super cool because my job there as an investment manager was to look after existing Virgin assets and ensure that Richard was getting a return, through to start looking at new Virgin assets and where should Virgin invest dollars in Australasia to create the next business. So that was a very cool 7 years at Virgin, mainly because my claim to fame is I got given $30 million on my 30th birthday to go start a gym chain. And let me tell you, I hadn't spent a lot of time in a gym. So that was a super incredible startup, but it was like Josh will tell you, startups are just like this really intoxicating thing to be involved with. That's so exciting. And it was great for me because there was only two of us who started it, and I got to do, I was head of strategy. I was also head of legal. Law degree came in handy. I was head of sales. I was also head of services and reception and the cleaning team. So, I got to do a really broad range of experiences. I also picked up a husband, so that was quite handy as well. And then, so after sort of 7 years at Virgin, and we sold Virgin Active at the time, I went and did a 2-year stint in financial services, leading sort of customer and digital. And I guess this was almost at the dawn of digital, because I was trying to, at Virgin Active, I was having a Facebook experiment. I used that as a marketing channel as an experiment. And then I went into a bank and tried to lead out digital across 32 brands and figure out how to do social servicing and really interesting stuff like that at the beginning of the dawn of social. So then after that, I was sort of loved the role, just wasn't really loving the huge big bank at the time. So I got a call to come and work there. I got this call from the recruiter who said, Katrina, don't you want another Australasian role? Because my role at Virgin Active was Australasia. I said yes. And she's like, well, I've got the perfect MD role for you, full P&L responsibility, 200 mil of revenue, large team across Asia and Australia. I'm like, sounds perfect. And she's like, and it's so you, it's a big consumer brand, irreverent, don't take the sales too seriously, but take business really seriously. I'm like, who is it? And she said, oh, Kentucky. And I went, oh, bye, phone's breaking up, bye. Because my impression about Kentucky was it was a booze bus for bogans. So I said, no thanks. Anyway, the recruiter kept calling, and eventually I had a tea with the chair, who's still my chair now, who is a Kiwi, and Kiwis, you have got to stick together in Australia. We get the beats, so you got to stick together. So I had a tea with him, and and he had joined Kentucky the year I was born. And still there. And he said, look, you're absolutely right. Your impression of Kentucky is what it was 20 years ago when you should have been taking the trips. But these days it's very different because Generation Y and Generation Z are different. So he put me on a trip. I put on some threads and tried to pretend I was under 35. And anyway, I had a really enlightening experience about what travel is these days in organised tours and what they are in terms of their cultural immersion, their engagement in local community, and the focus. Frankly, my customers today are more interested in food than they are going up the Eiffel Tower. So really interesting, different customer. So I spent the last 6 years doing that, along with having a few kiddies along the way. And most recently, I've added to my portfolio the Anticky Inn. So now I've got Contiki and then Contiki's Thought Mature, people being Trafalgar Holidays. So yeah, 6 years in tourism. Can't say that 2020 has been my favourite, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Back to you, Leah.
Thanks, Kat. And Irit, I was writing up your CV, and it sounds so similar to myself in terms of engineering, MBA, consulting, banking, and now Bunnings. So Irit, do you want to take us through your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an awesome summary, Leah, which very similar to yours. So I actually at university studied science engineering. So I did a biomedical engineering degree, which I think was really positive from sort of, really advocating my love for innovation. But, over 5 years, I very quickly learned that I didn't want to be an engineer. And so I subsequently went, very similar to sort of Katrina and Leah, went into consulting. So spent a couple of years in LEK consulting and decided after that it made more sense for me to be an internal rather than an external consultant. And that's sort of a long conversation for another time. So I actually spent the subsequent 13 years in banking across NAB and also ANZ, and had a really awesome time. So across sort of innovation, customer experience, strategy and transformation. During my 13 years at the bank, I had my, two favourite people. So, and obviously my husband is my third, but so Aiden, who's 7. And when I had Aiden, I actually, at the same time, as Leah mentioned, completed my MBA. And Jazzy, who's 3, and when she was born, I actually started a startup, which I'll talk through a bit more detail later, but it's called F Empowered. And really that's around financially empowering employees in particular to achieve their financial goals. And obviously it's a really critical topic for right now with COVID. February, as Leah mentioned, I was really fortunate enough to join the Bunnings team leading innovation. And really my role is solving unmet customer and business needs through the use of technology and innovation. And that's my summary.
Awesome. We'll come back to F Empowered a bit later, Irit. So Shosh, I called Shosh a few months ago when I was searching on Google, and I got the warning, your search is at risk, to try and understand what was going on. And I don't know if people have seen it, but Shosh, do you want to talk through why hasn't it made the mainstream media so much in terms of what's going on? I called Shosh to get the 101, and she was like, yeah, I'll explain it much better. The media industry's been under a bit of pressure. There was, going to be sort of the voluntary, government sort of code put in place. And now, do you want to talk through what's happening when people go to search and why Google and Facebook and even YouTube could be at risk?
Yeah, sure. This is consuming most of my life at the moment, so I live and breathe this discussion. But basically, when COVID hit, obviously lots of businesses were hit and everything was hit very hard. And in particular, I guess the publishing industry and news publishers were hit particularly hard. And you may have seen there were lots of announcements that about redundancies in the news industry and reducing the amount of news. And the government clearly and fairly has a vested interest in obviously sustaining good news in Australia. And so I guess that kind of turned to Google and to Facebook because there was this sudden push and requirement for a mandatory code to effectively, the claims by the publishers is that they're not profiting as a result of Google and Facebook. And I guess it goes a little bit further than that. They say that Google and Facebook are stealing their content and, you know, they're not getting remunerated for it. Google and Facebook, I mean, obviously I can't speak for Facebook, so I'll speak for Google, but I would say it's the same for Facebook. Obviously have a very different view on this. We have a view that there is a market failure probably in the publishing industry, but it's not for necessarily Google to fix. I guess our view is that it's been really misunderstood because the publishers do control the narrative. We don't really get a write-up of our side of the story in the papers. You'll only ever see the sides against us. But effectively, our view is that it's not that we steal content. It's that publishers decide whether they make their content available in search or not. We don't force them to make it available. And if they do decide to make it available, they get the benefit of people clicking and going to their website. We don't control the content. We don't see the content. We don't display the content on Google. We just link to their own pages. And if they want to have a paywall or whatever they want, they can still monetize from it. So the real issue, as we understand it, is that obviously they've sold off many of their businesses, classifieds, travel, a whole range of other things, and they no longer can monetize. And, you know, there are so many facts to this that people don't know. Google doesn't monetize off news. We don't make any money when someone clicks on a news link. So it's not that we even make money from news. It's more that we see it as innovation has created a shift in how advertisers advertise. People don't want to advertise against what Trump's doing. They want to advertise against someone doing a search, for example, Bunnings. Someone might do a search for how do I fix my house. And so there is really a shift in the way advertisers have seen the way they want to advertise, and Google meets that demand. But we certainly don't monetize off news. So it's caused a big problem for us because the narrative by the newspapers is very different to what we believe should be the narrative. And it's very difficult for us to get them to publish our side of the story because it's not in their interest. All they want to do is effectively make sure the government creates some mandatory legislation requiring us to pay them a portion of our profits. And that's effectively what it is. It's something that diverts the profits from Google to publishers. And, you know, it's for things such as they want already built into the code are things like we would have to pay for their costs of publishing, i.e. their staff, their labour, just because they make the news. Things that are just unheard of, things that it's completely one-sided. There's no attribution to the value we give to them by people actually giving them more traffic. That's not considered a value. And so we are obviously objecting to this. We think it's a totally unfair code. We don't object to being regulated. We don't object if there's fair regulation placed on Google and Facebook. We understand that Google has, you know, innovated a lot and comes with that need sometime for regulation, but we don't see this as clever regulation. We think it's not going to achieve much at all, and it's certainly not going to boost the publishing industry. So yes, we have put warnings, I guess, in the assets that we have to try and get the message across and to try and, you know, make it clear that under the current regime, it's very complicated. There's a whole range of other things in the code that just don't work well. For example, they want the publishers to get early access to our algorithms above and beyond everyone else. So above Contiki, above Bunnings. So you guys wouldn't be able to, you know, optimize your search results over them. You know, there's just so much that they are trying to do that's unfair to small businesses and to everyone so publishers succeed. And we're doing everything we can to, I guess, lobby against it. And look, it's an ongoing process. It was supposed to have been resolved by now. The government had said they would have enacted legislation by now. But I think we're having at least some effect now. And I think the fact that they haven't enacted anything and they're still consulting with us means they're listening. And so, yeah, watch this space. I think it's an ongoing battle. They say that it will be enacted by the end of the year. I have no doubt it's not going to completely fall in our favour. But I guess so long as it falls into an area that we can kind of reconcile with with reality, we could probably live with it. But at the moment, it's in a very difficult position, and we're continuing to lobby against it.
It's just fascinating. But surely, other countries around the world are struggling. Also, the media industries, are they pressuring government to do something similar?
Yeah, France has a very similar. The French regulators are doing something really similar. Korea has actually just launched a similar type of investigation. In France, they've resolved it in a much fairer way, which we would be fine with. In France, they've sort of reached a point where they've said, you know what, you have to at least negotiate with publishers and try to resolve it. And if you can't, they can choose not to put their content onto Google, which they can do now anyway, by the way. We don't even have to negotiate for them to do that. But we think that would be a fair outcome. If they really do demand that they want to be paid, that's fine. But if we decide the price is too high, we should be able to say no. But under the current regime, we don't get the chat. Like they choose the price, not us. Like it's ridiculous, wow. Even if there's zero value to us. So we may get zero value from it, but we may be forced to have to pay them for it. It's just not commercial in any sense of the word. And it's not how our search, we want our search engine to be based on relevance and a whole range of other factors, not based on this.
That's what we've got used to. You sort of Google, I talk about it at work in terms of turning Bunnings from a noun into a verb, but Google is a verb. It is search. It's synonymous with search right now. You can't even imagine taking it away, really.
Yeah, to me, it's crazy because I can't even imagine what they're going to do to the model. And I don't know why they need to play with the model. But anyway, we'll see what happens. We're working hard on this.
Right, we could talk about it all night. Let's get on to another industry. Katrina, when we were sort of talking about tonight, we're talking about two different industries that you're involved with at, different ends of the spectrum. And who would have thought you could talk about travel industry and pet insurance in the one sentence? So tell us, Katrina, in terms of your involvement with...
Sure. Well, I've got to start with the positive stories. So my role as a non-executive, I sit on two insurance companies, Hollard Insurance, which is the sort of fifth largest player in the market, and PetSure, which is the largest player in the pet insurance market. And they pretty much underwrite every pet insurance brand that you would know. And, both these markets are actually having a fantastic time coming out of COVID. One, I don't know if anyone here has experienced it, but everybody's buying a pet, and very good companion when you're in lockdown. But because of that, obviously the pet insurance company is going great in terms of high sales, but also because people are actually at home with their pets. They're actually being, interestingly, looked after better. So there is actually less claims. And, you add high sales and less claims, that makes for a very profitable year for pet insurance. And for, Hollard, which is a general insurance player, so home and motor in the main, they have some business. There's, it's really interesting in terms of just it's such sensitive levers in terms of the claims. So the fact that cars have been used so much less and that therefore there's less accidents mean, such a small change in that factor has a huge impact on your bottom line. So insurance is actually doing very well as well. So it's really interesting to attend my board meetings and talk about, cautious optimism. There's obviously a few legal issues in business interruption insurance that are being ironed out here and in the UK, in Australia and UK, a test case is ongoing at the moment, and that would have a huge impact on the industry. It would pretty much wipe out the insurance industry if it was deemed that COVID was allowable for business interruption insurance. But so there's cautious optimism in insurance because they're having a very good year. There is some sort of legal stuff still to be figured out, but I think in the main it's going to see the year and the time of COVID, those industries will fare very well. So that's my positive sort of side hustle, if you will. And then I go to my day job, and arguably, I'm not sure there are many industries who have been more devastated globally by COVID than travel and tourism. And everyone's sort of saying, is it going to recover? Because no one's immune, right? If Virgin Australia can pretty much nearly collapse, then all bets are off for most parts of the entire value chain. But I guess it's the people with a strong balance sheet who can bear out this period that will survive, and that I think is really going to separate the market quite a bit. But what I think is most interesting for people who don't understand the travel and tourism, industry that much, is that my view is what's really going to change in this industry is the value chain. And that's what's going through the seismic shift, and distribution is going to change the most. So right now you have a whole bunch of what I'll call product and service providers, like my companies. So, organized tours for the Kentucky and Trafalgar, through to those who distribute them. In my sector, I'm talking about hotels or people who organize. So you either provide a box, a hotel room or a restaurant, or you're providing the metal in the air or the metal on the ground, or a tiny piece of metal getting you from airport to wherever you're going. And then there's a distribution, which is obviously in Australia, being mainly travel agents, and we've all seen the press on that. They've absolutely received incredible backlash in terms of the refund management process. And Australians have lost a lot of trust in that sector. What's really interesting, though, is it's not necessarily the trust that has lost that will see the demise of the travel agent, but really, I think there's a couple of things going on. One, those who have dominated in the past will not survive because they don't have the strength on the balance sheet. So you're going to see a whole lot more people in this industry go into administration. And two, the most interesting thing about it is travel industry is actually quite, it's a little bit behind the curve in terms of the way that they think strategically and the way that they think about digital, for example, and the way they think about pivoting. And so those who haven't pivoted are really going to suffer coming out the end of this. Will the industry survive? Absolutely, because everybody in the world wants to connect and everybody in the world wants to see the world. But nobody's going to go anywhere, particularly Australians, not going to go anywhere until, one, they have, well, three things. One, they're able to. Australian borders being closed certainly hasn't helped any pivots. Two, in terms of certainty, people aren't going to go until they know that they can go, and they're certainly not going to book until they've got that. And then the third element, trust. There's been trust is really eroded with the public and whoever they deal with in terms of for their travel and tourism suppliers in the past. And certain carriers like cruise, they have got category brand damage, and they're going to need to overcome that. So that's really interesting. In terms of pivot, everybody's trying to sell domestic. If my big banana is always been sending people to Asia, into Europe, into America, etc. Every organisation is really trying to turn local, and that is quite difficult. You can't get an Airbnb in northern New South Wales now until next April. In Byron, you can't get into a restaurant for 6 weeks. If you go to the Hunter Valley wine region, the people who are running day tours 3 times a week now and 6 times a day. And that's New South Wales, and you've got a completely different story in Victoria, where every business has pretty much had to hibernate, and most won't survive coming out of that. It's really the entire economic model of travel and tourism has to shift because yield is a thing that underpinned your revenue and how you made money. And that is going to have to change for the entire industry when we go into a place where you can't jam as many people you can into the middle tube in the sky or the middle tube on the ground. So there's some thoughts for you.
Thanks, Katrina. Can't wait till I can travel again, but I agree with you. I think in particular domestics, I can see my family in Sydney, who I think some are on the call today, but it's hard to imagine actually now just getting on a plane and going overseas and even what that would involve. I mean, we're excited to go 25 kilometres right now here in Melbourne. So even interstate is quite hard to imagine. So let's just move on to Irit before coming back for another round of questions. So Irit and I tried to convince Irit to join Bunnings, and Irit was like, actually, I've got this startup going and it's about financially empowering people. So thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to just continue with my startup. And then a few days later called me back and was like, you know, maybe I can do both. So Rich, do you want to talk about, like, you know, empowering people to be financially fit? Who would have thought in February how important that would be? And, you know, you'd lined up a whole bunch of in-person workshops. Do you want to talk about how you've had to pivot in order to be able to train people through the startup?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I actually may do is start with Bunnings and then shift over to F Empowered. So from a Bunnings perspective, as Leah mentioned, I joined the team in Feb and probably only met most of my team 5 or 6 times before we all transitioned to work from home. When I came on board, my role was really about creating and implementing an innovation practice or an innovation process. And very quickly that shifted to, as most of the team did, how do we keep team members and customers safer in store? And then how do we enable customers to buy what they need for their homes from their homes? And so just, you know, there was quite a large pivot that we made as a team that we'd only met sort of 5 or 6 times that we all did from home. So just a few innovations that we sort of implemented over the last 8 months. So the first one is we had an app which was really in test form that we brought into the hands of customers, which is within 6 weeks. And that was the Bunnings Product Finder app. And that solves the problem of enabling customers to find what they need in store fast. The second one was to solve the problem of social distancing and basically keeping track of how many customers are going in and out of stores. We implemented an app for team members that sits across effectively 3 entrances that allows them to track customers coming in and out of store. And probably the most recent innovation that we did was the Bunnings AR Product Viewer app. And what this enables is, you know, through the use of augmented reality, you're able to really visualize how products can sort of be in your outdoor space. This is really focused on outdoor furniture and barbecues. And we have up to 100 products on there that you're able to sort of see through your phone using AR, augmented reality. Coming back to your question, Leah, on F Empowered. So as you mentioned, COVID hit, and a week later, I actually had 6 workshops lined up and one of Australia's largest banks. So we had, you know, rooms booked in the Docklands, we had attendees accepted, I had workbooks printed, the works, and, you know, management had made the really sort of important decision of continuing to run the programs due to the focus on sort of financial health, particularly during COVID, and I can talk through some of those stats. And so what I needed to do in the space of a few days was to shift, you know, a program that had been completely face-to-face to digital. And at the time, you know, I was quite nervous that we wouldn't generate the same level of impact through this, you know, virtual program that we do face-to-face, because, you know, money stress is the #1 stress in the workplace. It distracts people for many hours every week. And the other part is money is the #1 thing that people don't like to talk about. And so a program which is sort of incredibly focused on, you know, financial fitness and providing a framework and a conversation around how do you improve your financial fitness was a little bit sort of concerned that it wouldn't drive the same level of impact. And in fact, what we found was, you know, we were able to achieve similar, if not better results. So, you know, 98% NPS, 98% of people felt financially fitter as a result of the program. And, you know, people felt really grateful to the business for providing this solution for them, particularly at sort of the COVID times, and particularly at the start of COVID. And what it actually enabled me to do was to scale my business in a way that I maybe otherwise wouldn't have as fast. And I'm now able to deliver, you know, those programs which are incredibly important right now, regardless of my location and sort of the employee location. So it's been a really positive move for the business, and it means that I'm able to sort of financially empower more people, which is also fantastic.
Thanks, Irit. So right now it sort of feels like, you know, that we're not just working from home, we're living at work. Maybe I'll start with you, Irit. Any tips for, you know, love seeing your kids on, you know, on the screen when we have calls, but any tips from working from home in particular, because, you know, I can't see any time soon that we're going to be back in the office. And what do you think the new normal is going to be in terms of working from home versus working in the office?
Yeah, so what I will say is Mike Schneider has met Aiden running around half naked. So But that's an aside. So, you know, Josh and I, we both work full-time. We're both committed workers. And so we've been really lucky in the sense that, you know, for the last 100 days during stage 4 lockdown, our kids have been in school. That being said, I have to say it has been bloody hard. And so, you know, in reflecting for this conversation, there's probably 3 things that I've done to sort of support me through this and enable sort of the balance. You know, the first one is having a very clear space and time for work. So this is my space. This is a spare bedroom, which has been converted into an office. When I enter this room, I'm at work. And when I leave this room, it basically enables me not to sort of make my whole house into my office. The other part is, you know, that the time, you know, as you've mentioned, Leah, sort of, you know, I've got very clear days for Bunnings, very clear days for F Empowered, and even within my days, I'm quite structured. The second one is getting an hour of fresh air every day has really helped. So even if I look at my diary at the start of the day and sort of I'm back to back from 8 in the morning, which is typically the case, I say to the other person, look, for our meeting, well, I'm going to do this on foot, and often it encourages them to do the same, which has a double benefit. And the last part is, you know, which is important regardless of pandemic, is I've enabled sort of things to scale beyond my time. And so what that means at Bunnings is I'm really fortunate. I've got an awesome team. And really my job is really, you know, steering the ship, if you like, removing, you know, the icebergs or the obstacles and really supporting and empowering them to get what they need done. For F Empowered, it means, you know, hiring contractors for where I'm not best at doing something. So, you know, I've tried website design and development. I'm definitely not the best at that. I've actually recently hired a virtual assistant that's helping me with lead generation. And I've also upskilled other people to be able to deliver my program. So that's helped me to think sort of more strategically and systematically about sort of my business and Bunnings.
Thanks, Irit. We move on to you, Katrina. You know, up in Sydney, you can obviously, you know, move around the city, which would be just awesome right now. But any tips from working from home, and what do you think the new normal is going to be?
Look, yeah, I mean, it's such a different situation, I guess, New South Wales to Victoria. And, you know, up here, we really only had that sort of 9-10 weeks of hard shutdown, which was a nightmare. So I can't imagine doing it for 6 months. We've got 2 kids under the age of 3. So, you know, finding one space when they've learned how to open the doors is not really working for us right now. And we're in a 2-bedroom apartment. So this, you can see the whiteboard behind me. This is our bedroom, and approximately 1 meter that way is our bed. And this is the office, and we have another office set up in the lounge. And I have been known to take video conference calls from our laundry, which also has a bathroom in there. So I think a little sense of humility and groundedness is great. That's the key thing that we've used to get through. Throw money at the problem when you can. I'll have that, you know, I have the benefit. It didn't lock down. We didn't have any help or didn't have any childcare or anything. But now I sort of do have the nanny, and her very clear remit is they need to be playing in the backyard and or out of the house. So picnics are highly encouraged. Those, but I think the key thing for me is probably similar to Irit in terms of being extremely structured, extremely organized, and extremely productive. So whilst, you know, never more before have I needed to connect with my team more on a both professional and a personal basis. I've never needed to connect with them more, but at the same time, I'm extremely efficient now in terms of my engagements, my one-on-ones, because we just don't have time. And I've always said I don't believe in work-life balance as a concept. I just believe in life, and work's got to fit into that, and family's got to fit into that, and fitness it used to fit into that, and family, etc. So you know, you have to work your life now more to that ethos, which is for me, that means, okay, I'm going to do 2.5 hours of work now, and then I'm going to put everyone down for their nap, and then I'm going to do another 3 hours of work, and then I'll deal with whatever tanty before the nanny arrives, and then I'll do this part here. And so it's extremely structured, and everything needs to happen within that time, which is exhausting. but it's the only way that, the only way that it has to happen, and the only way it can happen. So it's a case of developing the resilience, have a glass of concrete, harden up, and carry on.
Thanks, Kat. Shosh, I think Google might have been one of the first companies to actually send all of their team home to work from home. How's it working for you with 3 kids and a dog and Richard out of town, I think, tonight? And any sort of forecasting as to when do you think everyone will go back?
Yeah, so Google did take an early move and decide that it was going to be like the front runner to try and just get everyone at home straight away. Obviously, for Google, that wasn't difficult because the remoteness was very well set up. People work from home all the time at Google, so it wasn't a massive leap for people to do that, but it was unusual still. I mean, we had interesting questions because Google has a cafe and a barista and a whole range of things. People were basically saying, well, will we get food vouchers for the food we have at home? Like, we had the most ridiculous questions about, what benefits they would still get if they were no longer working in the office. So yeah, it was crazy, but Google's also made a decision to try and be one of the last to go back. But having said that, Google's already making plans and rotation days when people can start going back. My first thought about how to cope is don't get a dog, don't get a puppy when you're working from home and you have already too many things to do. The puppy is the bane of my existence. The puppy is the only thing that causes me true stress. Yeah, I would say that my predictions are this. I think the great thing about this is everyone has now worked out how they can work remotely. I think people who had never been able to work remotely and in particular banks, I think they really struggled with this, and other industries really struggled with, even law firms actually struggled with the whole working from home. And I think that this has proven to all of those sorts of industries that people can work from home and they can work from home effectively. So I think that's a great outcome. I think, however, and I don't know if you've all felt this, but I certainly did, you spend your first few weeks working from home thinking this is great, and then you kind of get to a period where this is no longer great. It's like, let me out of here, please. Like, this is the worst thing you could have ever done to me. So in another way, I think that's also great for companies because I'm sure they manage employees all the time wanting to work from home who are suddenly going to want to race back to the office. So I don't know. I have a theory that actually, while it's great because it's enabled remoteness and working from home, people are actually going to appreciate a lot more being in the office or, doing things not remotely. People are going to appreciate spending time with each other and things like that. So I don't know. We, like I said, we started a rotation program. It started really slowly. You didn't have to go back in on your rotation day. It's very optional, and no one went back. But I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, there's been a real shift and people are starting to go back on their rotation days. And, interestingly, we kept our barista at the office. So it does keep people wanting to go back. But yeah, I just think that it's created a whole new way that everyone's going to somehow combine their working from home and going to the office in a much better way.
Shosh, I just wanted to add to that because I've been talking about Google a bit about this and how you guys approached it, because how I'm talking to my board is, it's been really interesting managing a whole bunch of millennials and Gen Zs, and they've always wanted to work from home, and it's been very resisted. Other than very what I would call open-minded startup, very leading edge companies like Google and PayPal, and I guess all the big tech giants have always encouraged working from home. But what I think this has driven is really interesting because I think there's a cultural change across Australia who are now going to be accepting of this, of working from home, and it not just being something that those cool tech startups do or those funky young people do. It's actually cross-generational. And I think that is going to be really interesting as that flows across other organisations. And then I think, the interesting part for generational change is how previously more mature leaders in the industry might have said, in any industry might have said, no, this is impossible, and productivity actually declines. And I think a lot of organizations, I know a lot of the big professional services firms and a lot of big banks are actually doing the studies to prove that productivity has increased. So I don't think this working flexibly. I think it'll be working fluidly, and you'll go into work and appreciate it a lot more, as you said, Shosh. But I think people will also appreciate working from home. And I think it's really interesting. This will move it away from a gender-based issue, where it was working flexibly and working from home was something that mums did who weren't really committed. And I think this has gone across the gender to now being something that is not just about that pigeonhole. So I think that's going to be really interesting from a cultural perspective too.
Maybe just a final question from me before I hand back over. Leading teams remotely is obviously, a real challenge. Any tips, from, any of you in terms of, mental health has, been a really big issue during this time. Any tips for sort of engaging your team and really focusing on mental health during this period?
I'll start just by saying this. Firstly, it's really tough, way tougher than I expected. And I do a daily check-in with my team. We'll get on a call for 15 minutes a day. And I thought that would be the solution to everything, and it's not. It's far from it. And I think I would just say that I don't think there's an easy answer to this. It takes a huge amount of time and effort and energy. And even then, I don't think you can really truly understand what each person's going through, whether they have too much work or too little work or too much other distractions beside work or no distractions beside work. There are people that don't have any families in a very small unit, have no, my problem is I've got too much going on around me. They have nothing going on around them. And I think that's they're really lonely, those people. And I just think I was never equipped for this, and I think I've done really a terrible job of it, to be perfectly honest. But I just don't know that there's an easy way to do it. And I would say as well, we've all been working super hard and super long hours. So finding the time to dedicate to this, I almost feel like I need a full-time person dedicated to this alone. So I don't have an answer, but to say it's a really important problem that you've raised. And I think it's highlighted to me that these are really important issues that, I should be better at, and they are at the top of my mind actually all the time.
I think from, my perspective, we, as I mentioned before, started in Feb, have only met, a few of my team have probably grown in size by 50% since that time. So there's a lot of team that I actually haven't met. On top of that, we work agile, which, as many of you know, actually involves very, interactive, lots of walls with post-it notes everywhere, daily stand-ups around those walls. So shifting to home was challenging, but, there's a few things that I found quite helpful. So for us, it was sort of the first one, and maybe Shoshana, drawing on what you said, is you're making the informal formal. So that means, checking in with team really proactively and regularly, those Thursday or Friday afternoon, games and events, still sort of formalizing them in meetings, having those team stand-ups. The second thing that, helped us was using technology effectively. So we use Trello for our stand-ups. We use Miro to do brainstorming. We use Teams to sort of do virtual conversations. And probably the last one, which is the most important, is we've really encouraged, not only accepted, but encouraged vulnerability and being proactive in the sense of actually checking in with people, creating that culture of vulnerability and being sort of open to that. And equally having the tools and resources to really rapidly respond to those things. So I think that sort of, in my mind, was what has worked really well for our team.
Katrina, any final thoughts from you?
I think what's really interesting is, everybody's noted that over the past 9 months, e-commerce has accelerated. All our businesses are switching in terms of becoming more digital. I mean, my business alone has gone from low teens of digital to now we're sort of 80% digital sales, etc. So it's a vast contrast. But all of that and everyone's digital capabilities have improved because we've all spent our time 12 hours a day, 13 hours a day on screens like this. So to your question of, what are you doing to manage your team? I'm actually encouraging e-toxing. which is detoxing from your devices and anything electronic, because Zoom, events and quizzes with your family and stuff like that was super fun in March. But now if you have to do another Teams, spend the entire day on Zoom, I mean, it's really exhausting, and I think it really has a huge impact on people's mental health. So I think we actually all need to go through an detox period, whereby we get the natural balance back. It's been great in terms of the advances of e-commerce and digital adaptation in the market, but the digitization of our brains has got to a point where it's numbing us. So I think we need to get to a place where I'm supporting my team to actually spend time away from their screens and doing old school stuff using a pen and paper to change their perspective from the square.
I think it's great. So I'm so sorry, Moshe, I think I'm over my time allocation. I've absolutely loved the chat, Shosh, Kat, and Irit. It's just been fantastic, particularly to learn, different industries and what you're all doing, and just to see your lovely faces again is just fantastic. So I think I'm handing over to Yehuda and Zalma now, is that right?
Yeah, thanks, Leah. That was really informative, and thanks to Leah and all the panel for taking part and giving up of your time. Look, to all the audience, we haven't really had much time for formal questions. So Zalman and I are going to run something which we ran at the last event, which we had a lot of fun with. I don't know if the panelists had as much fun, but it was called Rapid Fire, which is where we just call on our panelists and moderator to answer some quick questions. Don't think about the answer too much, just first thing that comes to your mind. And while we're doing that, if any of the audience wants to, type in any questions they've got for the moderator or any of the panelists, we may get to one or two of those at the end as well before we close. So I'm going to kick off. And Katrina, this one's for you. So considering you're with Contiki, will interstate borders be open by our summer holidays? And where would you go if they were?
$1 million question. Look, I think it's a strong possibility that all states, potentially other than Victoria, will be open by Christmas, is what we're hearing through our governmental contacts. They are hoping for Victoria, but we'll see. Where would I go? It's everyone wants to go to the Territory right now, and the Rock and stuff. It's too hot, guys. Get to Tasmania, see a bit of that part of the country, and see, I would say, a lower, there's some good old-fashioned smaller town beaches in the lower Queensland and upper New South Wales. Maybe check out south of Perth as well. And then next winter, because we're probably not going overseas, check out the Territory and Uluru then.
Okay. Next question is for Shoshana. When was the last time you wore shoes?
I love that question. I will say that's actually true that people don't wear shoes in the office. Yeah, I don't need to. I wear shoes, although not at home really so much, but yeah. But there are lots of people who don't wear shoes. All the engineers walk around barefoot.
Irit, how many coffees are you on per day?
Well, since I had one this morning with Leah, that's a total of 3. But I'm still quite upset by Katrina's answer that the borders may not be open in Victoria. So, so I'll say 3.
This question is for Leah. If Dan Andrews and Yehuda drafted this, Donald Trump, but I'm a Trump supporter, so I'm going to change it. If Dan Andrews and Joe Biden were both drowning and you could only save one of them, which one would it be?
Oh, no.
Donald Trump is standing on the side safely and he's watching. And he's great.
You know what? I'd save Dan Andrews because I reckon he'd go to jail for manslaughter.
Right.
Shoshana, as Katrina mentioned, a lot of people are getting dogs during lockdown. Did you and your family get one? And which one do you prefer, big dogs or small dogs?
Yes, we got a dog. I wish he was. Oh, he's right here. Do you want me to show you the dog? He's super cute. Just a sec.
Josh, did you get insurance? I know people.
What? He was asleep, but I just woke him up.
That's a good dog.
Big
He's a
dog.
poodle, and he's like medium size. And he's super annoying, but
What's his
cute.
name?
Red.
Red.
He used to be red, but now he's white. But his name's still Red. So there
She
you go.
calls him White at the park.
This question I'm going to throw to Maishi and Dina Khan because they always get missed out here. But what are the biggest lessons you both learned during the ISO period?
Go Dina first.
On a serious note, I've just learned to try to take day by day and not worry about the future so much.
Good answer.
And I've learned the most important thing in life is my dear wife and my beautiful children.
No
Well,
answer about Mashiach? Nothing about Mashiach or Hashem? Nothing?
My wife is, if you live with your wife and you treat her respectfully and beautifully, that's how you connect to God and bring Mashiach.
Nice comeback.
Katrina, what's the last thing you liked on social media?
It was Instagram today. Oh, I know one's relevant. I liked one yesterday. That was me, Shosh, and Leah. And Sarah, were you there as well? I think
Sarah as well. I think she's online
in the
too.
back
Sarah
of
posted it.
a taxi for Leah's 40th.
Very nice.
Irit, what is, have you developed any vices during lockdown?
Oh gosh. I think just more coffee. So I used to only have one a day and now I'm at 3. And trashy TV shows is the other one.
Any good ones?
Leah?
I'm currently watching Beauty and the Beast.
That's original.
Yep.
This is a controversial one, but we know they're off the menu and not allowed. This is for Leah, but carbs are off the menu. But what's your favorite if you could have any carb? Bread, pasta, rice, or potatoes?
Probably potatoes, chips, actually. Sweet potato fries.
The next question is for all 4 of you, and it's a one-word answer. So the next question is for all 4 of you, and it's a one-word answer, so it can go pretty quickly. But out of all the different platforms, Zoom, Teams, Blue Jeans, Skype, and Google Hangout, which is the one that you prefer the best? Katrina first.
Teams.
Shoshana, you don't, we it's okay. We assume you're going to do Google. Irit?
Teams.
Leah?
Teams for me. I don't know if you've used Teams. Together mode, where you're all sitting in a stadium, is just awesome.
Cool. That's a fun question.
Shoshana, what's the most recent stock that you bought? Aside from Google.
Oh, that was going to be so easy for me. I've only ever bought stock in companies I've invested in. So eBay, PayPal, Google.
They've done pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask this question to Leah, if that's okay. But if you're looking to hire someone right now, what is a top priority that you'd be looking for in that person?
So we're looking to hire an innovation manager right now to put in a pitch for someone to join Irit's team. The ads on LinkedIn. For Bunnings, the number one screen is actually about cultural fit. So we've actually got someone dedicated in our team who used to work in stores, and she doesn't know anything about innovation. She doesn't know anything about digital, but she's just awesome in terms of Bunnings and culture, and she pre-screens people for cultural fit, and she can do it within sort of 15 minutes. So that's the number.
But how do you assess someone's cultural fit in an interview when all their answers are rehearsed and not true?
So Millie is the one who asks the questions, and she's just got a great relaxed style just to get to know people, and she'll just ask, random questions in terms of what they've done that day and just in terms of how they respond, how they work in a team. And she can, quite quickly come up with an assessment about their cultural fit.
Irit, what's your preference? Texting or talking?
texting.
Yeah, obviously. Shoshana, is it going to be ice cream, pizza, or chips? Which one? If you can choose one of three.
Oh, I thought ice cream pizza was one. Forget it. Ice cream pizza are two. It's chips. Like Leo, always chips.
Yeah. The last one for Katrina. If you had to choose between a perpetually cold place or a boiling hot place to live, which one would you choose?
Heat every day of the week.
You haven't seen Katrina's Instagram or Facebook profile.
Last question for Shoshana. Would Google ever open a retail store?
We have Google online. You can buy pixels.
Yeah, but the future of retail is in stores, not online.
Yeah. It's I don't think they would, but I love the idea of it.
Everyone else is doing it. Samsung has one, Apple has one, Microsoft has one. All the good
We'll
companies
never say never, right?
I'll follow you up.
Okay.
Thanks so much. We'll throw it back to Moishi.
Thank you all so much, and that was incredible and insightful. And I really enjoyed the quite amazing, Shoshana, what you're doing in terms of Google and how that's all going. The uphill battle you've got, and Katrina, in terms of needing to pivot and organize your destination holidays. I can tell you, there's a beautiful place in Victoria, which I'll reach out to you, just past Bryce, one of the most exotic places in the world, and I've got a connection over there to organize a holiday. And in terms of how you're balancing your private business, your own business of advancing, and at the same time working in bonding, it's quite extraordinary. And of course, to Leah, thank you so much for leading tonight and informing us and just bringing this incredible team together. Really, really appreciate it. And to all of you out there, Zalman said something, he asked it as a joke or not, but he said, what is the most important thing you've learned during COVID? And in all honesty, the most important thing I've learned is how much we need one another and how much we need to stay connected. And that's really what tonight was about. It's about connecting people. So please reach out to myself, to Dina, to any one of us. Stay connected. We are going to some sort of, COVID norm. We are going back to some sort of stage of openness, whatever that means. But we still need to be connected. We still need to reach out to one another. I just want to, next week, we've got quite a few amazing workshops lined up. On Sunday, we've got a judge speaking to us from America, the first female religious judge, which is quite an amazing story. Tune in on Sunday. On Tuesday night, we're joining Tel Aviv University. With the new laws coming in, we're hopefully going to have our first Friday night dinner back since we went into lockdown. So from November 1, please God, that will happen, subject to it being 100% kosher in terms of Dr. Dan. But thank you all for joining. Thank you all for being part of tonight. And it's really, really been incredible to have you all. And thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you. And keep connected, keep it real, keep safe. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.